Where are we, morally speaking? What is the common good? What is our common goal as a society? I often hear people, important people, philosophers and politicians, intellectuals, speaking about the common good. Okay, and how important it is to never lose sight of the common good. Okay, what is it? What's the common good? Is there a set of ideas that we can all identify and say, yes, that is good. That is what we all want. That is what we all should pursue. Yeah. What is it? Mm, These are very important questions to ask, friends, because they reveal our present condition, our social condition. And that's what I want to talk to you about in this video. I want to make these questions relevant to you and also help you see where we are, morally speaking. We're going to start this video with a quote from this book. This is a quote that I've used before in other videos, but it's such an important quote from this book, Irrational Man by William Barrett. William Barrett was an American philosopher who wrote this book like in the 60s. Is in my estimation, the best introduction to existentialism there is, in English, at least. Great book. And in this book, we find this quote: Religion, before our modern age, had been a structure that encompassed man's life, providing him with a system of images and symbols by which he could express his own aspirations towards psychic wholeness. Very, very interesting expression there. Psychic wholeness. We're going to go back to it in a moment. With the loss of this containing framework, because it's gone, we don't have it anymore, man became not only a dispossessed, but a fragmentary being. So, in other words, we had once a religion, Christianity, that was important, that used to give us guidance, an idea of what it's morally appropriate and morally inappropriate to do, and what we should pursue as a collective, right? We relied, let's say, on the Christian story of, creation and the crucifixion, and that was very, very important, relevant for our society and for our civilization, for Western civilization. But guess what? God and Christianity are not important anymore. Culturally speaking, like I know it's very important for some people today, for many people actually, but it's not relevant for our society, for our culture. It used to be, but not anymore. In America, at least, I would say 60 years ago, right? Most people would consider themselves Christians. Most people would go to church. And therefore, most people in America, they had a clear idea of what was right and wrong. We relied on the biblical stories, the Ten Commandments, right? Even for those people who didn't know much about Christianity and the Bible, okay, everybody knew the Ten Commandments. They were displayed in many public places, in monuments and stuff. So everybody felt like, okay, these are our guiding principles. And but again, that ceased to be relevant for our society. Many years now, it's been the case. And it was Nietzsche who first had this realization. Nietzsche is famous for many, many important things and books that he wrote, but he is probably most famous for this statement, for the God is dead statement. Okay, everybody knows, right, or most people perhaps, they immediately associate this statement with Nietzsche. But Nietzsche made this statement many years before Mr. Barrett published this book. I would say probably about 80 years before Barrett's time. And Nietzsche, with the statement, God is dead, said something so profound. Now, what did he say? What did he mean by God is dead? What was Nietzsche trying to do? Was he trying to acknowledge his agnosticism to the world, or was he trying to be provocative, or was he trying to express his rebellion against the status quo, or what? Or was he just trying to say something cool and thought-provoking? Nietzsche, friends, in my view, he was simply stating a fact. Not that God is dead in a realistic or scientific or even theological sense. Okay, no. But God is dead in a cultural sense, definitely. Definitely. Now, Nietzsche made this statement or wrote this statement like in the 1800s, like towards the late 1800s, when people in Europe, in the Western world, they would still go to church and they were still very religious, and they would still, do all these rituals, these Christian rituals like baptism. People would go to have weddings and that sort of thing. So Christianity, apparently on the outside would still look like it was important for every society in the Western world. But Nietzsche knew that it simply ceased to be relevant, like really, really important. With the discoveries and the new ideas in science, for example, the idea of evolution, right? God became less and less and less important. And Nietzsche was the first one, perhaps the first one to realize, God is dead. But here's the problem with God being dead. This is the real problem. We built our entire civilization on this idea that there is a God, that he created us, and and all the biblical stories and Christianity and all that stuff. So we built our institutions, our governments, our laws, our universities on the belief that there is a God, he's our creator, and everything else. Now that I realize this, is like Nietzsche, right, sort of rationalizing this issue. Now that I know, I'm aware that this God is dead, well, the obvious consequence will be the collapse of the entire civilization. Because this is the Christian God is what's at the foundation of our civilization. If you remove the foundation, or if the foundation cracks, the whole edifice of our culture is going to come crashing down. People still are not aware of it. They're still going to church and they're still doing their baptism because they've been doing it for centuries. But one day they're going to open their eyes and realize that God is dead. And then what? And then what? Well, Nietzsche said that we have two options here. It's an either or. Okay, now knowing that God is dead, we have to either come up with our own moral values. We have to create new values. We have to come up with an alternative story, a substitute for this religion. So we all know what game we're playing, so to speak. We all know what are the fundamental ideas, values, principles we must live by, abide by, and what ideals sort of we should pursue. But we need a complete different narrative, story, set of values. Because if we don't come up with a new story, the other alternative is nihilism. We're going to end up being nihilistic. And friends, that is not a good place to be. Nihilism is a mindset. And the mindset is something like this: it's a rejection of values. Like the nihilistic person would say, nothing is valuable. Nothing has intrinsic worth. Nothing is worth pursuing. Life has no meaning. It's absurd. We are here today, we're dead tomorrow, and then forgotten. And everything we do here, we accomplish here. We're not going to take it to our graves. And it's just making plans for the future is such a waste of time. We should enjoy our time while we can. Live for the moment and forget about the future because there's no meaning in life. There's no value in anything we do. That is the nihilistic mindset. Can you imagine if this was the mindset of all of us in our society? Can you imagine? Well, we wouldn't have a society with this mindset. There are people in our society today with this mindset, but thank goodness there are not many. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that. Maybe I shouldn't say that. But at least most of us are not nihilistic. Or perhaps we're not aware we are nihilistic. I'm thinking of many students that I have had who I had the pleasure to have this conversation with, and they have told me, "Gosh, Mr. Molina, I did not know I was pretty nihilistic in my orientation. I wasn't aware of it till we had this conversation, or till I went to your class." So nihilism is not a good place to be. There have been many studies about the psychological consequences of the nihilistic mindset, friends. This is no joke, and it's very well documented in research. I mean, you don't have to take my word for it. You can look it up, and you'll find the exact same conclusions and facts. Okay, here's a data. They made a study many years ago about people in prison, violent criminals in prison. And the study revealed that 98.4% of them, something like that, 98% were nihilistic in their orientation. Like most violent prisoners by far are people who are nihilistic. They see no value in life. They see no purpose in life. People who live for the moment, for the present. People who don't care about plans, don't care about commitments. Well, nihilism can lead to that place, criminality. But it can also lead to other places. Psychopathologies. Friends, this is very well documented, very well studied. And this is what Mr. Barrett means here by psychic wholeness. We used to have psychic wholeness when we relied on the Christian story. We did. And again, we all had a sense of what was right and what was wrong to do. So, but not anymore. So that's why we are dispossessed of a story and fragmentary in our dealings with other people, in our society, morally speaking, culturally speaking. We're fragmented. My values are just as good as anyone else's values, even if they're completely different. So there's no unifying narrative, unifying story, set of principles, values we're abiding by. There's none of that. Now, it might not be evident to you, though, why this is important. This is super important. And I use this illustration in my classes. Okay, I tell my students, I said, listen, you're all sitting here listening to me, looking at my PowerPoint, taking notes very diligently, and behaving very appropriately. You guys are quiet. When you want to say something, you raise your hand. In other words, you all know what game we're playing here. You know what are the rules of the game. You know how to conduct yourself in my classroom. You know the expectations. You know the goals, right? You know what you're expected to do, regarding assignments, but not just assignments, behavior. Everybody is acting very appropriately. No one is standing up in the middle of my lecture and walking in different places. No one is sleeping on the floor. No one is eating. No one is dancing in the room, right? Have you noticed? I said all of you are acting the same way, the way you're expected to act. Because if you don't, if you start acting randomly and doing whatever you want to do, we're not going to have a functional class. Nobody's going to learn anything. I won't be able to teach. And there'll be no goal, no purpose in going to class. So, okay, right? That makes sense, right? Okay, well, we know what game we're playing here in our classroom and the expectations. What game are we playing outside of our classroom, outside of our school, in our society? What game are we playing? Do you know what the expectations are for you and for everybody else? Do you know what is our common goal? Is this something that you can identify, that you think most people identify and say, yeah, this is our goal as a collective? When I ask these questions to my students, most of the time they have no clue. They don't know what to say. Yeah, what game are we playing outside in our society? But sometimes students say something like, well, we're playing a legal game, Mr. Molina. You know, we know those are the rules we're abiding by, the laws. We know what it's legal, what it's illegal, what is criminal, and we try to abide by those legal expectations, right? So therefore, we know stealing is wrong. We don't do that. We don't physically assault people and that sort of thing, right? So I said, okay, well, here's the thing about the laws as a game. It's a very tricky game. Why? Because normally it is our morals that inform our laws, not the other way. It is not like the laws inform our morality, what is in our thinking, what is appropriate and inappropriate to do. It's the other way. Our morals, what we consider right and wrong, that's what informs our laws. So here's let me give you an example about that. At 40, 50 years ago, homosexual relationships were considered wrong. They were actually considered a psychological deviation. Okay, if you were homosexual 50, 60 years ago, people would probably recommend you to see a psychiatrist. People would assume that there's something wrong in your thinking. Okay? And there were laws against homosexual activity. For one thing, homosexual marriages were non-existent. That was just something that was absurd to conceive like 50, 60 years ago. Not anymore. We changed our minds about homosexual relationships being inappropriate. And we changed our minds quite radically because now it's not only okay to be homosexual, we actually celebrate homosexual relationships, right? We have a whole month to celebrate Pride, correct? So there you go. We change our minds about what's right or wrong regarding homosexual relationships in this case. And then our laws changed. Our laws follow suit. And then, not too long ago, homosexual marriages were legally permitted in the United States. But you see what I'm saying? First, our morals, and then our laws. So that means if you think it's safe to play the legal game, well, we can change our minds about what's appropriate, legally speaking. We can change our minds. Right now, pedophilia is illegal in our country. It's illegal. Okay, so we consider people who are pedophilic or pedophiles, I'm sorry, we consider them, that they're immoral people. There's something wrong with people who feel a sexual attraction to minors. Okay, but here's the thing. What if we change our minds about that and in 10 years, 20 years, okay, we legalize this sort of behavior? And because here's the issue with sexual relationships. For years, we used to consider legally 18 years old. If you were 18 years old, and it's still the case in most states, You have to be at least 18 years old to engage in a appropriate sexual relationship with anyone 18 years or older. But if you had a sexual relationship with someone who was under 18, then that was considered a crime, right? Because it was seen as pedophilic. Well, but now in some states, they changed their laws regarding the age of consent. And in some states, if you're 16, you're good. There's no issue, no legal issue. If you, being an adult, have a sexual encounter or relationship with a 16-year-old, in some states, that's fine. It's legal. Okay, that would have been seen as pedophilic 40, 50, 60 years ago. Not anymore. And there are places in the world, there are countries that the minimum age is 14. And there are other places, other countries, they are considering even lowering to 12. Can you imagine? And this is no joke, friends. It's still not legal yet, but they're considering pushing down the age of consent to 12. So, wow. Well, that was pedophilia just a few years ago. So we can change our minds, we can change our laws. Fyodor Dostoevsky, Russian novelist. Interesting contrast with Nietzsche, because Nietzsche, okay, he sort of made this statement, right? God is dead. Dostoevsky, during the same time, the 1800s, late 1800s, he made a very similar claim in, actually one of his characters did in his book, The Brothers Karamazov. Dostoevsky was also aware that, okay, people were becoming increasingly less religious, and God and Christianity was becoming less and less relevant in the culture. He also saw it coming. And in this book, he had a character saying, if God does not exist, anything will be allowed. Anything, any behavior will be allowed. We will be able to just justify, legalize any kind of horrendous criminal behavior. There'll be no limit if there is no God. If our God dies, we're going to be in serious trouble. So, yeah. So now, well, we've legalized a lot of things that back then were considered monstrous, totally immoral, criminal even. So there you go. That's the thing about the legal game. Now there is another game we play today in our society that people are not aware of, and that is the capitalistic game. And I actually have a video about the capitalist ethic that it's quite interesting. You should watch it. But anyways, so where are we, morally speaking? Where are we? Gosh, okay, we're dispossessed. We don't have God. We don't have the Christian story to rely on. We don't know what game we're playing as a collective. We don't have a common good or a common goal. So, is there a name for our condition? There is. And it is called ethical relativism. That's where we are, friends. And what is it? What is ethical relativism? Funny, it's just a name, right? It's a philosophical, ethical term, but it sort of describes our condition, our way of thinking morally. Now, in essence, ethical relativism denies the existence of objective moral standards. Universal or absolutes in morality, right or wrong actions valid for everybody, every time, everywhere, with no exceptions. So, ethical relativism from the start rejects the notion of there being absolute rights and absolute wrongs. Like the Ten Commandments. Okay, the Ten Commandments used to be the most identifiable known set of absolute moral rules. You shall not lie, deceive other people. If you do that, that it's wrong. Even if it's not illegal, it's still wrong. And people knew it. You see, people knew it. Even if you're lying and getting away with it, people back in the day when Christianity was relevant, when God was alive, people would still feel guilt. They would still feel accused by their conscience. And now I'm thinking of another Dostoevsky book that actually addresses this very issue, and that is the crime and punishment. So yes, you can go around lying and breaking laws, rules, laws, God's absolute commands, and you think you're getting away with it, but you won't. Sooner or later, you're going to face God and judgment in the afterlife. Okay, we used to rely on that story, not anymore. So, yeah, well, Ten Commandments, who cares? They're not absolute. Lying can be right sometimes. You know, it can bring benefits. It can actually produce goods, can make people happy. Lying, so there you go. So there's no absolutes. Everything is relative. Wow, quite a mindset, don't you think? And 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 gosh, so many people speak like that. So many people have this mindset. I don't want to say most people, but sometimes it feels that way. Like most people have this relativistic sort of orientation regarding morality. An extreme version of ethical relativism is known as moral nihilism. That word, nihilism. Okay, what is moral nihilism? Moral nihilism, from the Latin nihil, which means nothing in Latin. Not that it has no meaning, but that's what it literally means. Nihil means nothing. Moral nihilism holds that there are no moral facts of any kind in the world, that morality is simply based on social conventions, social constructs, things people change their minds a lot about, things with no real objective existence. People who hold this view of morality are called moral skeptics. So, okay, I would say, technically speaking, moral skepticism and moral nihilism are the same thing. They mean the exact same thing. A moral skeptic is a moral nihilist, and they have this attitude regarding morality. Morality is not only there not only are no absolutes in morality, but morality is just something that it's just so it's based on nothing. Nothing. That's the word, right? Nihil. So, so what are some of the implications of this view? Let's talk about it. David Hume, probably the most famous, he has to be the most famous skeptic philosopher in history. He asserted that when people make moral judgments, they are simply expressing approval or disapproval, like or dislike, love or disgust regarding a particular action or behavior or moral belief. Philosopher Schaeffer Landau puts it this way. When we declare a murderer wicked or a relief worker good and kind, we are expressing our anger or our admiration. We are not stating a fact. Because there's nothing factual about morality. Nothing solid, objective about morality. Morality is whatever you want to make of it. And well, that's not actually what Hume is saying in right here. Hume says, okay, puts it this way. Okay, little correction. Hume puts it this way. When we say that something is morally correct, we're simply saying that we like that. When we say something is morally wrong, we're simply saying we don't like it. So take bullies, for example. We say bullying is wrong, right? And we promote that idea in our public schools, and we say, oh, we have to stand up to bullies, and we want no bully. Bullying has no place in our school, in our society. Yeah, bullying is wrong. The moral skeptic would say, there's nothing factual or intrinsically wrong about bullying. Nothing intrinsically immoral about bullying. We simply don't like it. We don't like bullies, and then we make that moral claim, right? Bullying is wrong. That's it. We like generous people, right? We do that. We really do. When we see an act of generosity, we like it. And because we like it, we say generosity is morally correct. It's about that. It's about taste. And the same goes for everything else. We don't like uh, people who are physically abusive because we don't like these people. There's nothing really wrong, intrinsically morally wrong with people who physically assault others. We just don't like that. There's nothing intrinsically wrong, morally speaking, about stealing, taking someone else's property. There's nothing intrinsically wrong about that. We just don't like thieves. And because we don't, we say stealing is wrong. That's it. So we like it, we say it's morally right. We don't like it, we say it's morally wrong. That's it. And we change our minds a lot about what we like and what we don't like. And again, I'm thinking of the example of homosexual relationships. We did not like it a bit 60, 70 years ago, for centuries. Now we celebrate it. So there you go. And that same, if you think about it, the same applies with every single thing we do. Dostoevsky, if God is not real, anything will be allowed. Friends, don't get me wrong. This is not an exhortation or injunction to make our society return to its Christian roots, let's say. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm simply describing our moral present condition. That's all I'm trying to say. And I'm trying to explain why we ended up here and what kind of issues, what kind of problems we're going to find. And that's important to know, don't you think? So there's a lot of moral skeptics out there. People who don't think that there's nothing, morality is intrinsic, it has no value, no factual based, and we change our minds about all sorts of things. So anyways, I'm being repetitive, so that means I have to go to the next slide. Contemporary philosophers believe that, contrary to moral nihilism, ethical relativism does affirm the existence of moral facts. However, these facts are not universal absolutes, but relative to an individual or culture. Okay, I disagree with this view, which is why I put contemporary philosophers. I don't include myself in that group, because I don't think ethical relativism affirms any moral facts. Because the moment you say, yeah, the facts are relative to an individual or culture, so that means, is it factual or is it not factual? Well, that depends on where you make the statement or who makes the statement. Okay, well, that means it's not factual, right? So anyways, most contemporary philosophers believe that. Ethical relativism sort of believes in some facts, moral facts, not absolutes, but facts. But I wonder what the difference is between those two things. Anyways, a further distinction is therefore necessary. Individual relativism holds that moral actions and norms are defined by an individual. So morality is a matter, fundamentally, is a matter of one's personal beliefs, while cultural relativism holds that moral actions and norms are defined by a particular culture. So, okay, we have these two main branches coming from the trunk of ethical relativism. And one branch is individual relativism, the other one is cultural relativism. These are not mutually exclusive. As a matter of fact, I would say most people who are individual relativists, they're also cultural relativists. But this means sort of they're very similar, but they're not in some other ways, right? And here's the difference. Okay, individual relativism is quite common. It is what makes people say things like, you think abortion is wrong, but I think abortion is right. And it's okay. You have moral views, I have different moral views. Other people might have a different perspective on abortion, and that's okay. That's okay. All views are equally valid. Really? If and people say this, right? We can agree to disagree. Okay, that means who's right? Uh, because you think you're right in your views, I think I'm right in my views. And if we accept this premise that everybody is right in their own eyes, who is right? Who is right? Who is wrong? Who is wrong when everybody is right? Interesting position. But friends, you have no idea how many people I've come across who speak this way, who say these kind of things. Maybe you do. Maybe you do. Or when people say, well, that's your truth, but it's not mine. Like, what? Uh, so you have a truth, I have a different truth. It's not the same truth. So everybody has a different truth. Is that possible? And I remember politicians addressing this fact about the truth. And they say that we live in a post-truth society world, like post-truth. Of course, because people think, okay, the truth is something relative to an individual. Okay, so if you believe George Washington was the first president of the United States, well, that's your truth. That's not mine. I don't think he was. And that's okay. Is it? I mean, living in a post-truth world, that's okay. Wow, that's really something. Um, one day I had a student. This was a funny story, and she claimed to be an individual relativistic person. Right? She was convinced that yeah, everybody have their own moral views and that's okay. And she had a water bottle on her desk. And I said to her, okay, you got to explain this to me in detail because I don't see how everybody can have their own moral views. And she was, yeah. And so she started giving me an explanation, and I grabbed her water bottle. And she was, she saw me grabbing her water bottle, and she kept talking. But then I grabbed her water bottle and started sprinkling water in my hands from her water bottle. And then I put it in my hair. And then I started sprinkling water under my arms, in my armpits. And friends, everybody was in class. Everybody was like half of the class was, I think they were, giggling. The other half was like shocked, like, what in the world is wrong with Mr. Molina? And I was doing this very random thing. And at some point, the student just stopped talking. And she was just shocked, like looking at me, thinking, what is this man doing? What is this man doing with my water bottle? But then I said, why did you stop talking? You were saying that everybody have their own views about what's right and wrong. So why are you shocked? I think what I'm doing right now is it's appropriate in my views. If you believe that, if you believe everybody have their own views about what's appropriate and inappropriate, okay, you shouldn't be shocked. I'm just doing what I think it's okay. And I said, okay, you are shocked because I'm doing something that is not conventional, right? Something that is not expected. So, okay, so that means what? That means that there are expectations, that we do have a sense of, okay, we know what is right and what is wrong. Of course, in the context of the classroom, it's easier to see because I said this before. In a classroom, we know the rules, we know the expectations, and we know how we can have a functional class. But you will not accept that outside of the classroom. You will not accept this kind of random behavior from strangers. Just strangers just walking by and grabbing your water bottle and just trying and drinking from your water bottle. You're not going to accept that. So it's not true. or at least it's problematic to say that everybody's entitled to their own moral views, and that is okay. Okay. So what I'm trying to do here, friends, is to make you see that sometimes we say these things, but we don't really think through them. We haven't really spent time thinking about, what is it that I'm really saying? What are the implications of what I'm saying? Do I even believe in what I'm saying? Yeah, your truth, my truth. You think you're right, I think I'm right, and that's okay. Okay, that's a very strange place to be. Individual relativism. But people makes these claims, these statements all the time, unfortunately. A lot of confusion, regarding relativism and skepticism. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide. Cultural relativism, this is the other branch, makes similar kinds of statements as individual relativism, but at a societal level. My action is wrong in your country, but it is right in mine. Okay? Or vice versa, right? What you're doing in your country might seem appropriate, but in my country, it's terribly wrong. But you know what? But that's okay. I mean, after all, morality is relative. So there's no moral absolutes. Nobody is absolutely right or absolutely wrong. The implications in this case, however, are far more serious. For if we embrace cultural relativism, it'll be impossible to condemn wrongful actions committed in other countries and even in our own. Is that really the case? You'll see in a moment. For this reason, critics of cultural relativism believe that this view of morality justifies practices which are clearly immoral. Domestic abuse, rape, honor killings, and female genital mutilations. Friends, in my classes, in person and online, I make my students watch videos on honor killings and female genital mutilation, just so they are aware of what these practices are. Because I think it's mind-blowing how many people today, perhaps young people, because my students are pretty young, they are completely unaware that this is going on in our world today. These practices. So if you're not familiar with what this is, I encourage you to, Google or YouTube. The videos I show my students, though, they're not inappropriate. They're not like graphic. You see anything like criminal going on. But they're still, though, pretty difficult to watch and to digest. And so if you're going to do that, if you're going to watch some videos on honor killings and female genital mutilations, I recommend you to do it with somebody you trust, a trusting adult. But it's incredible how in our world today, in many places, these practices are considered morally appropriate. Nothing really wrong with raping somebody or with physically, or beating your wife to death. Like, really, that's not really wrong. That's actually an instance of honor killings. In some societies today, when you do something dishonorable and you're a woman, okay, and you do something dishonorable, your father or your brothers, they will feel entitled to kill you. And that it's appropriate, that it's good in their thinking, in their religion. And then there's just this female genital mutilation, which I think it's monstrous. It's just absolutely monstrous. And it's something, to me, it's mind-blowing that you don't get to hear a lot about these abuses in the media today. And these are serious crime, friends. Serious crimes. So what can we do about these crimes? If cultural relativism is true, think about it. If we, and this is what most people today believe, right? In our world, especially in the West, We think, oh, we cannot condemn other cultures for having different practices, different value systems. We can't condemn them because if we do, we sort of put ourselves in a very judgmental position. It's like us telling these people from other cultures, what you're doing is wrong. We're doing it, what we do is right. What you do is wrong. And we don't want to do that. That's so inappropriate, so wrong. So we have to accept these practices in other cultures, even if they seem completely monstrous, criminal to us, we must accept them because in the end, there are no absolute moral values, uh, rights, none of that stuff. Morality is relative. It's relative. In America, here's another example, not in the PowerPoint. It's absolutely normal, great actually, that women can go to college and get an education. Okay. In other societies today, women cannot do that. Women are pretty much property in some cultures today. I keep emphasizing that word today because it's incredible. It's just incredible that this continues to happen. Really, women are treated like property? Really? They don't have the right to own anything? They don't have the right to go to school? That is correct. And but hey, cultural relativism is the right way to go, right? About morality, right? We cannot judge them. We do things differently here in America, and we think it's appropriate for a woman to go to school. In other cultures, it's not appropriate, but that's okay. We have to respect cultural differences. Really. So that's a cultural difference. Like killing your own daughter, your own sister. That's a cultural difference that I must respect. Interesting. Interesting. I cannot judge them. I cannot say what you're doing is wrong. It's criminal because that makes me, whatever, puts me in this judgmental position of authority that I don't deserve. I cannot lay claim to. Interesting. Okay. All right. I wonder what you think. Mariam Namasi, political activist. I understand she was born in Iran. It's a critic of critical of cultural relativism. At a panel discussion organized by the Action Committee of Women's Rights in Iran a while ago now, 2001, Mariam said the following. This is an old statement, friends, but I think it's so on point regarding cultural relativism. See what she says about this view. She says, let us be clear about what cultural relativism is. It is a profoundly racist phenomenon which values and respects all cultural and religious practices irrespective of their consequences for women. Cultural relativism asserts that the rights of people, women and girls, are relative to where they are born, their cultures and religions. There is no right or wrong according to cultural relativist. What a, I mean, I couldn't have said it better. Again, there is no wrong when everybody is right. The same is true for cultural relativism, right? If we go about this notion that every culture have their own value systems and those value systems are correct in the views of the people of the culture, then there are no wrongs. There are no crimes. So, gosh, what do you think? Um, Interesting. Mariam Namazi, it's an activist, and she's seen these abuses firsthand, obviously, and so it's very personal to her. And to me, it's admirable what she does. She's a hero. In my estimation, she is a, oh boy, I don't want to be controversial, but in my view, this is what real feminism is or should be about. Like women addressing really, really important issues for women. fighting for it and even risking their lives in the process. Okay, that to me is admirable. That to me speaks like, okay, that you're not just talking. If you're putting your skin on the game, okay, it's serious to you. And to me that conveys admiration and value. I believe you. Okay, you say you're feminist, you say you're concerned about women's rights. You're fighting this battle and you're risking your life fighting this battle. Okay, you have my respect and my support. Obviously, obviously. So easy. So easy to speak about women's rights and going out and organize manifestations and protest here in America. Super easy. Try to go to one of these countries where they practice this sort of abuse, um, rapes, honor killings, and female genital mutilation, and try to go there and try to fight for women's rights in these countries. That's a whole different story, right? Whole different ball game. But gosh, okay, enough of that. Let's go to the next slide. Justin Trudeau. This is a very interesting example. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau famously stated that in Canada there is no core identity, considering his country is committed to the idea of multiculturalism. Okay, he says there is no core identity. We don't have a core set of values that all people in Canada must abide by. No, we don't have a unifying narrative, story, or game. We're playing, well, if there is a game we're playing the multicultural game. Now, here's the thing about this is very, very important, friends, to understand what I'm talking about here. Um, Many people might say, okay, multiculturalism is not the same thing as cultural relativism. It's true. And yet, but see, many people, or perhaps most people, don't see a real difference between these two things. Because I understand by multiculturalism, or how the way I think it should be, is something like, okay, acknowledging the beauty in other cultures, practices, beliefs, and ideas. And we can all, I think, recognize the value of these things. For example, food, right? If you go to a country you've never been before, let's say you go to Turkey and you try the food in Turkey, and you can definitely appreciate that and say, wow, this food is amazing. And people should know, people in the world, in America, if you're an American, they should know about food from Turkey and have this kind of restaurants in the United States. That's a good thing. Appreciate the music of other cultures, right? And the clothes, the way they dress, and that sort of thing. That's great. That's all great, good stuff. But you got to understand that cultural relativism, it's about morality. It's about what is right and what is wrong. Okay? You see, it's one thing to say, um, my favorite ice cream is strawberry, my favorite flavor of ice cream. And someone saying, I disagree, I think the best flavor is vanilla. And then a third person saying, no, it's chocolate. Okay. That's okay. That's okay. We can disagree about those things and we can have variety and diversity of taste. But we should not have a diversity of morals. That's a different thing. That is a different thing. And I'm going to make it more clear eventually in this video. But to finish with this slide. Because of this commitment, Canada is facing important challenges today. For example, should the country legally accept cultural practices like honor killings and female genital mutilation that clearly clash against Western values? I cannot believe that, and this is true, that there are people in Canada, important people in positions of power, politicians, legislators, they are actually consider asking themselves this question. Should we allow honor killings in our country? Should we allow female genital mutilations in our country? And you might be wondering, I mean, why? Why are they considering this question? Simply, since the country is committed to multiculturalism, and in the minds of many people in Canada, if not most, that means we have to accept, embrace all cultural differences. So if people moved into Canada with a different set of beliefs, moral beliefs, you see what I'm saying? If people come to Canada with different moral ideas, we should respect those people with their moral ideas, even if they are very, very different from ours. So if we have a family living in Canada who practice and they consider honor killings appropriate, killing a wife because the wife did something dishonorable to the husband, think about that word, dishonorable. What does that even mean? Whatever it means, it's okay. It's allowed in some societies today, and it's permitted by their religion. Okay, so if we had a family, they commit this crime, husband kills wife, should we consider that a crime? Should we put this man in prison for killing his wife? In his mentality, in his culture, this is appropriate to do. Who are we to judge this man for having different moral values? Aren't we committed to multiculturalism and accepting and embracing all cultural differences here in Canada? Aren't we saying, like President or not President, Prime Minister Trudeau, that there is no core identity in Canada? We don't have a real recognizable identity. Gosh, what a statement. I couldn't believe it when I read it. There's no core identity in Canada. So no, we're not playing any game in Canada. There's no game that we're all playing. There's no set of moral ideas, principles. Yeah, we have the laws, right? Okay. For those of you who rely on the laws and you think that's a safe place to be, a safe game to play, well, but now they're considering their morals because they have no morals. They have no core identity. They have no set of values. They're going like, should we accept, should we legally permit people from other cultures to practice this sort of things? Rape, honor killings, female genital mutilations. Now, the consensus among my students is something like this. And I got to say, when we address this issue in my classes, the consensus is this. Well, if somebody's coming to our country from another culture and they have this belief system, well, if they're coming here, they must adopt, they must conform, or at least abide by our belief system, right? After all, they're the ones who are moving here. I say, yes, okay, that's an appropriate way of going about it, or thinking about the issue. But in Canada, they since they are not committed to any set of values, principles, they have no core identity, then what can they do? Right? And if we in America, we continue with this narrative that, oh, we have to embrace and accept cultural differences and we cannot be judgmental, and we're going to end up in a very similar place. Friends, if we live in a society where we absolutely openly declare we have no core set of values, we have no core identity, there's no one game we're all playing, just good luck. Okay, we have the laws, but we can change the laws based on our morals. But what are our morals? Who knows? Who knows? We don't know. We don't know. We'll make it democratic, right? We'll let people decide what our morals should be. Is this, am I giving you a biased, an exaggerated account of these issues, friends? I would really, really like to know. Like, I have addressed these issues with my students in class many times. And I got to say, I am really, really concerned. Really concerned when I hear people making these statements. Yeah, your truth, my truth. It's right in your eyes, it's right in my eyes, or it's wrong in my eyes. And yeah, we shouldn't judge other cultures. We should embrace differences. I, Once again, I get it. Yeah, I can embrace a plate of food from another country, music. Yeah, I can appreciate that. But raping somebody, somebody killing his wife or daughter. Okay, no, that's not acceptable. That is just not acceptable. So, what do we do, friends? What do we do? What should our values be? What game should we play? Um, what values can we create? Nietzsche was pretty optimistic about this idea that we can actually create new values. In my opinion, I don't think we can. I don't think so. I think values are pretty clear what fundamental values are, but that's a different video, friends. Given that there are no universal moral standards, no moral absolutes, we are in no position to condemn others for having different ideas about what's morally right or wrong. This is according to ethical relativism. We have no option but to accept the fact, the idea, that we're living in a judgment-free world. That's it. A judgment-free world is not only our present condition, but it's maybe an ideal. That's the ideal. That's something we probably should celebrate. A judgment-free world. Because in the end, many people, perhaps most people, hate judgment. They don't like being judged, which is why now it's quite popular in America, having judgment-free zones, like safe spaces. You can feel comfortable being yourself and saying whatever you want to say, and you won't be judged for it. Let me put it very politely. That is a very stupid idea, friends. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for probably being too harsh in my words. I always tell my students, judgment is good. Judgment is good. Listening to people in their objections, in their observations about what we do, their criticisms, it's a good thing. It doesn't mean that they're right and you're wrong. No, that does not mean that necessarily. But you got to understand that some people see things that you don't see. Okay, that has happened in my life and continues to happen all the time. Like when I don't fully understand something, the first person I go to is my wife. And I go to her for judgment. Or for her opinion, you might say. And boy, she provides incredibly positive, effective judgment when I'm doing something I'm not supposed to. She pointed it out. And she tells me, that is not good for you. And friends, it's all sorts of things she says. But she's right. Most of the time, she's right. She's right. She loves me. She has my best interest in mind. And I believe her. And I see the point. Because it's not about, okay, just accept what people tell you and shut up. No. Listen to what people say. Consider what they're saying. Like really, really consider it. And then see what you make with that. And you're going to be so much better off, I'm telling you. I really appreciate people giving me their judgment. When they criticize me, they let me see what I'm doing wrong, what I'm not seeing. And of course, we like that judgment to be very polite, right? Very friendly. How do they call it now? Constructive criticism. In the end, it's the same thing. It's judgment. It's somebody telling you, hey, you're doing A when you should be doing B. Or if you're doing A, I don't think you're doing A correctly. That's what it is. I always say even the harshest form of judgment can be positive. Even the worst kind of judgment you can hear, somebody calling you an SOB. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes to be called, hey, you son of a bitch. But I gotta say, I have to say, I have to be very honest about this one. If somebody calls me an SOB for whatever reason, it would really make me think about, gosh, what did I do? What did I say to this person? Because I don't like being an SOB. Like, I really don't. I don't like being mean to anybody. I'm trying to be the best person I can with everybody. So if somebody calls me like that, it would really make me think, gosh, what did I do to this person? And honestly, I would try to find the opportunity to speak with this person, when he or she's calmed down, and engage the person and say, hey, what did I do? Um, did I say something? And then have the opportunity to see, maybe, okay, maybe I did not notice I was walking and I stepped on this person's belongings, right? A bag. It happens sometimes in the classroom. Uh, Unfortunately, they have stepped on students' bags, and sometimes, I see and I say, I'm so sorry. But what if sometimes I walk and stepped on someone's bag and I didn't notice, and then this person is angry at me? If this person tells me that, or calls me an SOB, and then later tells me why, I stepped on her belongings, then I would apologize and I would learn and say, okay, well, I guess I have to be more mindful when I walk, right? Where I step. That will help me being a better person, being more mindful of people's belongings and me walking, definitely. So that's the worst kind of judgment we can get, right? But seriously, I appreciate when people correct me, like I really do. So it is good, friends. We have to get rid of this mentality that judgment is it's bad, because then we're not going to be able to address any serious issues, like, again, these crimes we were talking about, FGM and rape and sexual abuse, inequalities, crime, honor killings. We wouldn't be able to say, hey, that is wrong. We have to do something about that. So we wouldn't have any conversation for the fear of not making anyone feel offended. Gosh, I'd rather be offended than killed. And I think everybody would agree with me on that one. So, okay, it's just in closing. The truth is, and I had a little bit of a hard time thinking, should I use this word, the truth? Because I've talked so much about your truth, my truth, and now living in a post-truth world probably means very little now, the truth. I thought about putting the truth with a capital T, but oh well. Truth is, for me, I hope you agree, that there is a way to identify an absolute and universal moral dimension in morality. There is a way to identify an absolute universal dimension in morality. It's what I meant to say. And that dimension is victimization. Victimization. And I have to give credit to the natural law tradition, who made this idea relevant in our thinking, in our legal system. Victimization. You know, regardless of your ideas about morality, about what is right and what is wrong, no one likes to be victimized. No one. Absolutely no one likes to be taken advantage of. No one likes to be physically assaulted, abused. No one likes to be deceived. No one likes to be lied to. And no one likes to be robbed. No one. Because when these things happen to you, then you feel victimized. And when everybody feels the exact same way about these actions, everybody, when everybody says, no, I don't like when people take my property without my permission. I don't like that. No, I don't like when people physically assault me. I don't like that. When everybody gives you the same answer, I don't like to be killed. I don't like to be enslaved. When everybody gives you the same answer, friends, that means that we have something pretty solid, pretty universal, don't you think? Pretty universal, pretty objective. Because the opposite, subjective, means that who knows, it might be right in some cases, in other cases, some people might think it's okay, like ice cream flavor, right? That's a subjective thing. What is the best ice cream flavor? Subjective. You're going to get different answers. But when you get the same answer, okay, then we don't have something subjective. We have something objective. You ask everybody, do you think you have a right to live? Of course, everybody will say, right? Probably they will be surprised at the question. If you say to people, you ask people, do you think you have the right to be free? Do you think that's your right to live your life your way? Of course. Of course, I have that right. And so on. Do you think when people takes your property without your permission, do you like that? No, I don't like it. Everybody giving you the same answer? We have something solid, friends. The fact, and not even the most extremist skeptic, moral skeptic, can deny this fact. You can ask him the same question. Do you like being deceived? Do you like being physically attacked? Do you like being killed? Well, you don't, right? Well, there you go. Everybody says the same thing. So you can't be a skeptic about that one or about some things, about what is right and what is wrong. So this is very important. And again, it's something that I credit the natural law tradition for making it relevant in our system of justice. Finally, I want you to be very clear about what is morality and what is culture. Okay. What's morality and what is culture? I said this before. Food from Pakistan, great. Music from India, excellent. What else? Dresses, dances from Argentina, oh, amazing. Yes, we can love those things. We can embrace those things. We see the value of those things. Some people disagree. Some people probably don't care about the music from Argentina. That's okay. But many people see the value in this diversity of cultures. But morality is a different thing. If there is victimization, if someone is suffering, if someone is dying, if someone is being tortured, I'm thinking female genital mutilation. If somebody is being physically abused, then friends, that it's not culture, that it's morality. And it's pretty absolute. Thank you for watching.